You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome, fellow patriots. Get ready for an hour of unabashedly pro-American, pro-conservative, and pro-biblical principles. This is the Blake Johnson Program.
Welcome to the Lanterns Radio Network, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. This is the Blake Johnson Program here on this Monday, February 12th, 2018. And my, what a weekend it has been. What a week it has been. I've really enjoyed it. I was fortunate enough to get a pretty good-sized weekend this past weekend. And I didn't have to work, which was really nice. And I even got half a day off Friday, so I enjoyed that. You know, considering the fact that I work a lot of weekends, it's quite nice to get not just a regular weekend off, but to get most of it off, even part of Friday. So that was quite enjoyable. I didn't really do a whole lot, but just enjoyed the free time and getting to relax. I was going to, I tell you what, I've really been needing to get a new pair of shoes in the past several weeks. Because the ones I got, they're running shoes. I think they're Asics. And I got them, oh man, it's been like a year and a half. Something like that, about a year and a half ago that I got them. And they tear apart pretty quickly, I will say. Now, considering the fact that I worked at a place called The Track, where I'm always running around on concrete and things like that, I mean, you know, it didn't take long for me to start tearing apart the sole of the shoe. But more than that, though, they just don't seem to last as long as athletic shoes. And I couldn't find it, and that's the thing, like when I'm trying to find shoes, it can be hard for me to find a pair that feels comfortable. I mean, it's more than just trying to find the size of the shoe. It has to feel comfortable. Now, I understand that, you know, when it's brand new, it's going to feel a little weird at first, but once you wear it for a while, it kind of settles in. So, I mean, it does do that, but even still, it felt even worse than that. It didn't even feel like it was going to take a little bit of time for me to fully, you know, get comfortable with it. So, I got these shoes, and they worked pretty well. I mean, they served their purpose, but man, I've been needing to get some, and I was going to this past weekend, but the weather did not permit that. It's been really cold, really icy. We got quite a bit of freezing rain and freezing drizzle over the weekend, which, you know, obviously draped over my car. So there was that. And the roads were very slick, so I spent all weekend at home, which, you know, I enjoy that too, but I did want to get something done over the weekend. But, oh well. Spring is right around the corner, even though this Groundhog Day thing that happened a while back, recently actually, is causing people to think that winter's going to be around longer. Look, it's just one of those weird things that we do as Americans, and that we just, I don't know why people enjoy this whole thing called Groundhog Day, waiting to see if the groundhog sees its shadow. I don't care. That doesn't determine the length of a season. It's just, it was a good movie, but that's about as far as I get into Groundhog Day. I love that movie. It's a really funny movie. But other than that, I mean, I just feel like at some point it gets a little old to be still practicing this thing we called Groundhog Day in real life. I don't know. But yeah, it was a good weekend. Very happy about this. So I recently became, and by recently I mean about 4 or 5 months ago, became a Philadelphia Eagles fan. the NFL team, Philadelphia Eagles. And if you listened to my show last week, you figured that out. But I became a fan of theirs primarily because of their faith and the fact that they are very open about their faith. I believe their quarterback, well, backup quarterback technically, but the main quarterback during the Super Bowl, Nick Foles, wants to be a pastor when he retires, whenever that may be. Retires from football anyway. So I'm starting to want Eagles attire. So I ordered a Philadelphia Eagles hat, and it came in over the weekend, and I'm very happy to be wearing it. I may post a picture of it on my social sites just so you can see it. It's not anything fancy. I didn't really want anything like a Super Bowl champions hat, because here's the thing. It's really cool to wear that at first, but I feel like after a while it gets to be a bit dated. And plus, I just don't like a whole lot of writing and stuff all over my hats. I like it to be a little... I don't want it to be just, with nothing on it whatsoever. But, I do... all I want is the Eagles logo. Their, obviously, the actual eagle. I want that on there. And, yeah, that's about it. I mean, I don't really need anything else on there. And it comes in, and it looks really nice, too. And I also just ordered a Eagles T-shirt, not a jersey, just a regular T-shirt, but it says Super Bowl champions and then the date underneath that. See that? I know I just said that about the whole Super Bowl thing, but it's a shirt, so I feel like you can get away with it a little bit more with a shirt, especially since you were actually there watching it on that day. So, but yeah, I am fully getting into the whole Eagles dynasty, if you will. And it's weird because I've never really been that big of a fan of football. Just in general, just never really enjoyed the sport, just watching it. But over time, it's really grown on me. And then when you come to find out there's teams out there, granted very few, but there are teams out there that really go out of their way to stand up for truth, to stand up for morality, to stand up for Christianity. And when I found these guys, I'm like, I've got to support these guys. It's so cool. So anyway, that's just a, 4 or 5 minute little rant on what I've been up to. So the reason I do that is because the rest of the show, we've got a lot of really serious and, quite honestly, depressing topics to discuss. I like to mix it up. I really do. I don't like it to be an entire show of really serious content, unless it warrants it. It truly warrants it. But it's the only way I can keep my sanity, quite frankly, during the week. Because I'll just be honest with you, and this is something I don't make a habit of saying on the show, especially with this show, especially this week. I just had a really hard time, guys, just coming here and doing this show. Because I feel like week after week after week, year after year, it's the same story. Essentially the same narrative every single time that we meet. And, the shows that I listen to, the podcasts that I listen to, I mean, yeah, you'll get some different stories, different players, in the mix. But overall, it's the same basic theme. America is in a state of moral decay, moral decline. You know it. I know it. This isn't a shock to anybody listening, yet we seem to still spend a lot of our time listening to the same basic chatter, the same themes, like I said, of what's going on. You have politicians in Washington, D.C., and I'll get into this more in the show, who can't seem to figure out that fiscal responsibility is actually a good thing, but quite honestly, I don't think they care. They will pass whatever spending bills they can pass, drive up the debt, make it harder for you and your family, for your children and grandchildren to live a life of material prosperity. Which is a good thing, by the way, if you aren't too obsessed with that material wealth. But it's good to be able to bless others. It's good to be able to live in a state of prosperity. Which obviously comes not just with material prosperity, but spiritual prosperity. But that's the thing. We're not only losing when it comes to material wealth, when it comes to... I mean, look, If you have over $20 trillion in debt, I don't care who you are, you're not really that wealthy. I mean, you're wealthy in outward appearance, but when it comes down to it, you're that much in debt. I mean, that's slavery, guys. That's modern day slavery. You are enslaved to debt. And again, not just material decline, but spiritual decline. Look at our churches. Look at our institutions that have, in many aspects, driven out God from society. You look at our education system. Many schools, many places have driven God out of the schools, have driven prayer out of public life. They've driven out any sense of believing what you want to believe, as long as, you can believe what you want to believe, just as long as it fits our narrative. But if you start to veer away from that, well, we don't really want you. Well, you're going to get sued. You're going to get driven away. You're going to lose your job. And I get so frustrated with all these stories. And I come in here, I'm trying to think, what kind of hope do I add to this discussion? What kind of message do we walk away from this? Is this going to be just another rant against the corruption that we all know is taking place? It's been there for decades. It's been there for centuries. It's been there for, since the beginning of time. What do we add to this discussion? And quite honestly, that's why I added in this devotional segment that we'll be doing every show, is because we have to focus on the things that really matter in this life. If we focus so much on what is happening in front of us that we can't see what is going ahead of us, if we look so much at the temporary that we lose sight of the eternal, well, then we miss out on what life itself is supposed to be about. If you are a Christian, you know that the real battle is not against flesh and blood. It's not Republicans against Democrats. It's not liberal versus conservative. It's not progressive versus conservative. It's not any of that. Those things come from, the battle between good and evil. The battle between Christ and Satan. That's what this comes down to. But to believe that, you have to be a radical today. To believe that, you have to be willing to be a laughingstock in your own community, in your own peer group. I don't know if I talked about this last week or the week before, but there's a statistic. I don't know if it's from the Barna Group. They're a pretty solid group when it comes to Christian studies and scientific polls and trends and things like that. But there is an increasing amount of Christians who don't believe in the power of Satan, who don't believe in demonic forces at work in our world today. Frankly, they don't believe in evil. They just believe, there are people who do bad things, and that'll all work itself out in the end, and we'll all be saved and we'll all be merry. Show me the scripture that points to that, because I have not read it. I have not read that anywhere in scripture. But there's an increasing amount of people who believe that in our own faith. So how do we promote this message that no, man is not inherently good? The reason we have all these problems with our debt, the reason we have all these problems with, the education system, our welfare system, the size of government, the fact that politicians go to Washington all the time and they don't do the things that they say they are going to do, the reason that we have the decline in sound doctrine being taught in churches, unemployment, homelessness, racism, sexism, discrimination of any and all kinds. The reason we have all of these things is not because it's by some random chance. There is, make no mistake about it, there is evil in this world. Satan is at work. It's like it says in Scripture. He is roaming around looking for someone to devour. He's like a roaring lion. He wants to devour you, and what better way to do that than to make you believe he doesn't exist? To make you believe he doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in this world. And make no mistake, people do have a choice. They do choose whether to do good or evil. But it's not just about good works. You have to be surrendered to God. You have to be surrendered to Christ. I know I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I know there's a devotional segment coming. But this all ties together, guys. It all ties together. We can't just simply separate politics from culture. We can't simply separate culture from God. These are all intertwined. You take God out of the picture, everything else, it's meaningless. It's pointless. It all decays. It all collapses. These all tie together. So I think that's the way that we move forward. We don't just focus simply on what people are doing. We focus on what God's doing, what He wants to do in your life. I could sit here for hours on end and talk to you about all the problems that's going on in Washington. I could do that. I could do what every other commentator does. I could do all of that. Or I could point to a solution. That's the solution. We've got to stop focusing so much on ourselves. We've got to focus on dying to ourselves, quite frankly. Getting rid of our sin nature and submitting ourselves to God. That's how we solve these problems. I know I maybe veered off a little bit from what I wanted to go, where I wanted to go, but I felt like that was on my heart. It's just something that I see all the time, every day, on social media, on the news, everywhere. In movies, entertainment. Everyone else is talking about what they can do. Why don't we start talking about what God can do? We are limited, but Christ is limitless. We'll be right back on the Blake Johnson program as we do discuss some of the just crappy things that are going on in our culture. And we'll start with the media. Back in a minute. So, do you guys watch the Olympics? Do you guys get any real joy out of watching the Olympics? I mean, I will say I enjoy it, especially the opening ceremonies. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, I'll watch the opening ceremonies, and I'll see all these other countries come out. And what's interesting is, if you pay attention, if you know your history, if you know what's going on in the world today, you'll see all these other countries come out, and you're like, well, I'm glad we're not like them. Glad we're not like them. I'm glad we aren't living in those conditions that they are over there. And then the United States comes out, and I just feel an immense sense of pride in our country. Despite our problems, we have a lot to be thankful for. And we can definitely focus on the problems. And trust me, I do focus on the problems sometimes too much. But it's just seeing the opportunity and the opportunities that this country has compared to the rest of the world by our own choice, it gives me a sense of pride. What doesn't give me a sense of pride is seeing how the mainstream media, particularly the left media, which is, basically most of the media, is the way that they talk about the other countries. Now, you would think, even a place like CNN, which used to be a fairly credible news site until, Donald Trump got elected president of the United States. Now, they are a complete laughingstock. At least I think so. I mean, do you guys go to CNN for your news? I don't. Now, for my show, sometimes I do, because I like to point out some of the ridiculous things that the left is talking about. But the average, everyday American, particularly the conservative American, do you go to CNN to get your news? I highly doubt that. And with this story, you'll be even less inclined to do that. So there's been this talk about North Korea and South Korea trying to come together, if you will, during this Olympic Games, which I know everyone else is, a lot of people anyway, are excited about that. I know North and South Korea, when they came out during the opening ceremony, I think didn't they come out together? I think they were holding hands and they were in unison. They were showing a sign of unity and so on and so forth. Maybe I'm just the only one, but I didn't buy any of that. I really didn't buy that. I didn't actually believe that, this is a turning point. Now North Korea is going to all of a sudden be willing to negotiate, be willing to turn a new leaf. I didn't believe that. Did you believe that? Who in the right mind believed that? I mean, this is a country that starves its own citizens. It's a modern day, like the best comparison I could compare it to would be 1930s Germany under Hitler, under the Nazis. These are awful, awful people in the tyrannical government. My problem obviously isn't with the people of North Korea. They've been brainwashed. I feel awful for them. When when Kim Jong-il died, the previous dictator of North Korea, and they brought all those people out and they were wailing and crying, even though they weren't actually crying. You couldn't see a tear on them. They were forced to. It was a display. It was propaganda. So you would think a place like CNN, even as radical as they are, even though they have some pretty leftist-leaning people on their network, with a place like North Korea, they'd be willing to maybe not essentially become their propaganda wing over here in America, but apparently that's not possible. I read this story over the weekend, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But of course, they weren't kidding me. So, they're talking about the sister of Kim Jong-Un. And the headline reads, from CNN, Kim Jong-un's sister is stealing the show at the Winter Olympics. And it reads, if diplomatic dance were an event at the Winter Olympics, Kim Jong-un's young sister would be favored to win gold. What a great way to start your story, within the first paragraph. With a smile, a handshake, and a warm message in South Korea's presidential guest book, Kim Yo-Jung has struck a chord with the public just one day in the Pyeongchang Games. Quote, I hope Pyongyang and Seoul get closer in our people's hearts and move forward the future of prosperous unification, she said in her guest book message, referring to the capitals of North and South Korea. Seen by some as her brother's answer, get this, seen by some as her brother's answer to America First daughter Ivanka Trump, Kim, 30, is not only a powerful member of Kim Jong-un's kitchen cabinet, but also a foil to the perception of North Korea as antiquated and militaristic. Do you understand what this is saying? I think you do. She is in stark contrast to Ivanka Trump. And she's a powerful woman. But she's also a foil to the perception of North Korea as antiquated and militaristic. Are you kidding me? So she's proving the point that North Korea really isn't as bad of a place as people make it out to be. Just unreal. But then, oddly enough, the next paragraph, but as North Korea's brutal dictator, Kim's brother has ruled with an iron fist since coming to power, operating Nazi-style prison camps, repressing political opposition, and even executing senior officers and his own family members in an effort to consolidate power. Okay. So it starts talking about this on and on. It starts pointing out that some in the people of South Korea are a little skeptical of, what's this woman's name again? Kim Jong-un? No, not Kim Jong-un. Kim Yo-Jung. These names are so similar, it's hard for me to keep track of them. But Kim Yo-Jung, and they were skeptical of her presence there. Let's see. Kate Yu, 21, who, like Yoon, spoke to CNN during Saturday's hockey match between Switzerland and the unified Korean team, said she doesn't think it's the best thing to have her here, although maybe part of having one of the Kim dynasty over is like a safeguard, then they won't attack. It wasn't until this week that the world learned Kim Yo-Jung would join her nation's Olympic delegation. Just a few days later, she is the face of North Korea at Pyeongchang. The first member of North's ruling dynasty to visit the South since the Korean War ended in an armistice in 1953, Kim on Saturday made headlines across the globe when she delivered an invitation to South Korean President Moon Jae-in to visit North Korea. It happened during a historic meeting between North and South Korean officials at Seoul's presidential race. It starts talking about the different things that she's done and where she's gone. Oh my gosh, look at her outfit. Look at the smile on her face. All these pictures that they post on this article show her smiling, show her so happy. Oh my goodness, this is a turning point. At a dinner at a hotel in Gangneung, the sub-host city of the Olympics, Kim Yo-Jung was wearing a wine-colored jacket and black pants. Oh my gosh. Look at her arms, everyone. Look at her arms. She is the person he trusts. Like most members of her family, little is definitively known about Kim beyond her official rank. It starts talking about her history and her education. She's so smart, guys. She is so smart. Oh my goodness. She was always close to her father, and after returning from Switzerland where she got her education, she was appointed to positions of responsibility in the government. Kim Yo-Jung's power exists because of proximity to the leader himself, writes Ken Gase of North Korean leadership expert. She is the person he trusts more than anyone else in his regime. Well, gee, I wonder why. Continuing forward, let's see, there's part of this that really made my blood boil. Let's see, this might be it right here. And it says, North Korea's Ivanka Trump. Are you kidding me? You're comparing Kim Yo-Jung to Ivanka Trump? Kim Yo-Jung's profile has been steadily rising since 2014, more in this piece, when she was made deputy director of the Propaganda and Agitation Department of the Workers' Party. Do you hear that? Propaganda. But apparently they missed that part. Her position is such that, according to a Seoul-based think tank run by North Korean dictators, or defectors, Kim briefly took charge of the country while her brother was reportedly ill with gout or diabetes in late 2014. And let's see. Oh, this is where it gets interesting. Experts say, that's a great way to start a sentence, I must say. Experts, oh, so they must be right, say her visit for the Winter Games is calculated to answer the expected presence of Ivanka Trump at the closing ceremonies. Quote, Kim Yo-Jung is the perfect counterpart to this, and it's also a signal that North Korea is not this crazy, weird, former Cold War state, but it too has young women that are capable and are the future leadership. And then it shows a picture of her with some of the children. Oh my gosh. She just loves the little kids. She loves the little children. All the little children of the world. Park Young-sun, a 45-year-old South Korean public servant, said she was pleased to see Kim Yo-Jung at Saturday's hockey game, which she called a great lesson for my children. They learned that winning is not everything, and that you can get more cheers for trying to overcome differences. And it just goes on and on. And I read this and I about blew a gasket. How can you possibly say that Kim Yo-Jung is a symbol of leadership for women? That she is someone that proves that North Korea is really not bad of a place. Oh, really? Then why don't you move there? Why don't you vacation there? Oh, wait, that's right. You can't, even if you wanted to. Is that why people are starving? They're starving happily because they just love the place so much? Let me give you some extra background on Kim Yo-Jung that, oddly enough, CNN just simply failed to point out. Kim Yo-Jung, she's not just a spectator, okay? She is an elite member of Kim Jong-Un's regime. Again, she is the director of the Propaganda and Agitation Department of the Workers' Party of Korea. Can it sound any more communist than that? There, she oversees the propaganda regime that constitutes a key component of the enslavement of her country's people. She's also a member of the Politburo. But don't just take it from me. Kim is personally sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department for her role in sustaining North Korea's oppressive regime. So, she's personally sanctioned. That's not exactly a good sign of being a member in good standing of the United States. But obviously you would know that if you were looking at CNN's piece. Also, I guess Business Insider, they were celebrating that Kim Jong-Un threw a look at the camera while standing behind Vice President Mike Pence. She threw us a look. Oh my gosh. Have everyone just praise her. Just praise her. She's amazing. She shows how strong women can be. Not Ivanka Trump. Oh no, not Nikki Haley. Nope, definitely not her. It's the sister of one of the worst dictators this world has ever seen. That is the symbol of leadership. Not standing up for human rights, no. But enslaving her people and starving them. That is the symbol of strength and leadership. Now, while CNN and others have praised her, the South Koreans have been decidedly more clear about the purpose of her visit. And this is, I think, is where it really all makes it come together. It tells you everything you need to know about this visit, everything you need to know about the blindness of CNN, and the fact that they are, in fact, playing right into their hands. Listen to this, an editorial from Chosun Ilbo, which is South Korea's newspaper of record. It says, quote, "It would of course be wonderful if the Moon Jae-in administration's efforts lead to denuclearization talks, but Kim Jong-un is not sending his people to Pyeongchang to talk about disarmament. He's sending them to weaken sanctions and spread propaganda." The Jungang Ilbo, another leading daily, made the interesting point that Kim Yo-Jung's visit is a sign of North Korean weakness, not the confidence that others have projected on it. Quote, "South Korea is North Korea's last resort. Pyongyang's dispatching of Kim Yo-Jung testifies to its deepening pains from sanctions." And that's really the truth. I mean, I don't know if you've seen stories of what's happening over in North Korea, but the Trump administration have really stepped up sanctions against them, and they've shown that they're not cowards. They aren't Barack Obama. They really do mean business. And I think Kim Jong-un knows this, which is why all of a sudden they say they have no desire to, disrupt the Olympic Winter Games. In fact, they're willing to go so far as to walk hand in hand with South Korean players. During the opening ceremony of the show, we're all together. I mean, I wouldn't think it would be this hard for CNN to figure out that this is Propaganda 101, guys. This is... You don't even have to be an expert. You don't have to go to journalism school. You don't have to go to any of the... You don't have to be a well-learned individual to know this is obviously not the way things seem. But CNN does not care. Is it CNN or MSNBC that North Korea said that they get their news from? Not all of their news, but they watch one of those networks. I think it's MSNBC. They watch MSNBC for their news. That's American press, guys. They're watching American press, and they like watching it. What does that tell you about the left-wing media? And it's interesting, you have all these late-night talk show hosts, you have these so-called journalists on CNN and other places who just go after the president. How dare he call the press the enemy of the American people? How dare he go after the media and try to label us as liars, as fake news? Well, when you're putting out crap like that, it's quite hard not to do that. And it's quite hard not to cheer the president on when he says things like that. I wish he'd word it a little bit differently, but the point that he's trying to make is one I think most people, if you are really sincere, could at least understand why he's making that point. You could at least see that it's not completely wacky that President Trump would refer to the mainstream press as the enemy of the American people. They certainly aren't promoting anything good about us. They're promoting good things about the enemy. And to me, it's another example of why regular Americans do not get their news from these people. There are plenty who do, but I refer to them as blind as sheep being led to the slaughter, is being willfully ignorant. Because you're getting, I know I use that word several times, but you're getting propaganda from these guys. You're not getting the truth. You're not getting the facts. And that doesn't mean that, the right-wing media is any better in some cases. In some cases, they're not. And that's why we've got to sift through all of the bias. We've got to sift through all of the madness that is prevalent in the press. And I know, obviously I'm doing a radio show, so I'm not completely detached from the media, but I do commentary. I don't pretend to be a journalist. I'm telling you my opinion on what's going on in the news today. And my opinion is, these people don't give a rat's butt about the truth. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about spreading American exceptionalism because they don't believe in American exceptionalism. They believe in socialism. They believe in top-down progressive state tyranny as long as they get to be a part of that. If they become victim to it, well, then all of a sudden they care. If Barack Obama's in office and he's doing all these terrible things, if he's violating the Constitution and proposing things that are in direct contrast to our founding fathers and our constitutional system, well, there's nothing wrong with that because he means well. But if Trump gets in and he starts doing things that we don't like, well, he's a dictator. And now all of a sudden we care about free speech. Now all of a sudden we care about the press, the freedom of the press. Now all of a sudden we care about, liberty and freedom. We care about all these things. No, you don't. You care about yourself. You're pathetic. And quite frankly, I agree with the president. You are an enemy. Not the enemy as in legal enemy, not traitor, but you are playing directly into the enemy's hands, and you are therefore worthless. Back in a minute. Well, hello, America. Thanks for staying with us. Hope you've enjoyed the show so far. If you'd like to listen to past episodes of this broadcast, you can do that by simply going to lanterns.buzz. That's lanterns.buzz. You can find the other shows on there as well from the other wonderful hosts that we have on this network. You can also go to Spreaker.com. That's speaker with an extra R. Spreaker, that's how I like to say it. It's the easiest way. Go to Spreaker.com and look up Lanterns Radio Network, or even easier, if you have iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, you can find all of us on there as well. Just look for the Lanterns Radio Network, or if you have iHeartRadio, the easiest way is just type in the Blake Johnson Program, and you will find my show out there. All the episodes are free to stream or download, so check us out there. Okay. So, if only our elected leaders were as concerned about fixing the machine as we are here at Lanterns. That is, after all, our slogan. We are here to fix the machine. Well, apparently not enough of us are here to do that. I want to spend some time here talking about this disastrous GOP spending bill. Disastrous. This bill adds hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to our already enormous debt. We are over $20 trillion in fiscal operating debt. And that's not even counting the unfunded liabilities, which we've talked about before, which we owe to other nations and that we have grown for many, many decades. Let me give you some, before we get into the specifics of this spending disaster, let me give you some facts about our national debt. This was from late last year over at Conservative Review, and it puts a lot of things into context. First of all, when you add the publicly held debt to the debt held by the government, you get the total national debt. If evenly distributed, that works to every citizen in this country owing $61,321 for the total national debt. That's what every citizen in America owes if you just level it out evenly. Can you imagine that? So, hey, don't worry about going to college and racking up debt. You've already got plenty of debt. Another fact here is not every citizen pays taxes, but every taxpayer owes $165,779 of the total national debt. Oh my goodness! The current interest payment on the debt in 2017 alone is about $7,709 per American citizen, which means if we made everyone pay a one-time payment of $8,000 in taxes today, that would back a little more than this year's interest payment, barely making a dent on the national debt. So, you force everyone in this country, just pay down $8,000. Just pay it down right now. Every citizen, 330-some million people. You do that, the only thing you've paid off is this year's interest. $8,000 is one heck of a lot of money, especially as a one-time payment. But it gets better. The national debt is bigger than the value of everything produced in America over 1 year. So, in other words, the U.S. GDP, or gross domestic product, is about $19.3 trillion, at least back when this was written. What that means is every dollar you worked for this year and everything of value produced in this country right now is still not enough to meet our debt obligations. So our debt, the size of our debt, is higher than what we produce. That doesn't necessarily sound like a good recipe for success. Number 7, we are adding to the debt right now. Government estimates currently project that this year's budget deficit will be $693 billion, but the government almost always underestimates the deficit. The government expects the deficit will reach $1.4 trillion by the year 2027. That's 5% of the value of everything produced in this country. To avoid default, the government needs to make interest payments on our debt. As the debt increases, the interest payments go up too. In 10 years, the interest payments alone on the debt will be projected to be around $760 billion. Between now and 2027, the government will pay approximately $5.2 trillion in interest payments, and not one penny of that will reduce the debt. So again, this is just paying down the interest. This isn't even going towards the debt. The debt still stays the same. The debt still stays at over $20 trillion. In 2015, when the debt was $18.2 trillion, it would have cost the American middle-class families to pay $1,700 in additional taxes every year to get the debt to post-World War II levels. The debt makes your family poor. Complete collapse is the threat of such uncontrollable debt, and collapse would mean massive cuts to government programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid in a very short amount of time. When taxes go up, social services stop, paychecks get smaller, and jobs are lost. There you have the perfect recipe for civil unrest. By the way, that's what happened in Greece. If it took you 5 minutes to read this, or to listen to me talk about this, the debt grew by at least another $8 million in that time. And it's just, it's infuriating. And it reminds me of the words of George Washington. When he was addressing the nation in his farewell address, George Washington urged us not to get into debt. He said, quote, "Avoid the accumulation of debt not only by shunning occasions of expense, but by vigorous exertions to discharge the debts. No throwing upon posterity the burden which we ourselves ought to bear." So he warned us to not drive up the debt, because if we do, that's going to enslave future generations. Well, look at where we are right now. And what's the GOP's solution to this? We're going to spend even more money. Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, gave a great speech on the Senate floor last week to try to delay this vote, which didn't obviously work because they voted on it, it passed, and then the president signed it. But he spoke on the Senate floor, and one of the most amazing things that I didn't know about was this money that we spent to build a natural gas station, not in America, but Afghanistan. And here's how that all worked out. This is going to make your blood boil.
You remember Senator Proxmire from the 70s used to have something called the Golden Fleece Award. Every one of those things he complained about in the 1970s happens now, but tenfold greater. Nobody fixes it. We don't pass individual spending bills. We do continuing resolutions, which means we continue doing the same thing we've done over and over again. $700,000 spent studying Neil Armstrong's statement. You know what their conclusion was? We're not sure. They spent $700,000 and they're still not sure. Did he say amen or one small step for man? We spent $500,000 studying whether or not when you take a selfie, if you're smiling in the selfie, does it ultimately make you feel better? $500,000. And so what do? Do we give these people less money? Teach them a lesson. Give them less money, and maybe they'll conserve the money. Maybe they'll eliminate waste if they have less money next year than they had this year. Or, what I'm proposing, freeze the spending. Is anybody proposing that? No. We say they spent $500,000 on selfies. Give them more next year. So the Republican budget will increase spending every year. It increases spending at about 5% a year. So spending goes up, and they say it's the baseline. And they say we're cutting off the baseline. No, the baseline goes up 5% a year. Spending will increase over the 10-year period. The red line is spending. Part of that's what the Republicans are proposing. They are going to stay on the spending curve. If we stay on the spending curve, they will continue to spend $700,000 studying Neil Armstrong's statement. They will continue to spend $500,000 on selfies. They spent another $500,000 on a climate change game. They spent $45 million to build a natural gas station in Afghanistan. $45 million. First problem, nobody in Afghanistan has a car that runs on natural gas. They discovered this after they built the gas station. The gas station was 86 times cost overrun. The original estimate was about $500,000 for the gas station, but lo and behold, somehow it cost $45 million. If your government had 86 times cost overrun, would you give them more money or give them less money? I frankly think we should give them less money. If you give them more money, they will not waste it less. They will waste it the same or worse. They should be given less money.
And he's right. He is absolutely right. And you know what's really sad about all of this is how alone he was. The only other senator that really spoke out against this as well was Mike Lee from Utah. You didn't hear anything from any of the other so-called conservatives in the Senate. And yes, that includes Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz voted for this stimulus bill, fully acknowledging that there was a bunch of crap in it that did not need to be in there. You should do some homework on what else was in this package. If you are conservative, you cannot support this. You cannot. And for Ted Cruz to support it, that really lowers my opinion of him. It does. I voted for him during the election. Can't say I would have voted for him this time, knowing this. It's disgusting. These politicians, the vast majority of these politicians, they really don't care. They are not serious about cutting the debt. They are not serious about cutting spending or taxes. They simply throw it out there and make it seem like they really care. But in reality, the same thing goes on every single time. And then, of course, to add to that, the president thinks it's such a great idea to put on a massive military parade. Oh, that's really going to solve the problem. That's really going to give the military the money that they need. That's really going to solve all of the world's problems by putting on a very, very expensive military parade in the streets of our country. Ah, yes, I see it now. The glorious tanks and soldiers all marching forth. That's definitely a good image to put on our country. It's so stupid. It really is. It's ridiculous. And I am sick and tired of identifying myself with a movement that seems to no longer exist. Where are you, conservatives? There are plenty who spoke out. But where are you in Congress? You know why you're not in Congress? Because too many people are afraid to really speak out and to really live by their principles. You want to talk about spending? Okay, let's cut spending. Let's do it. How do you do that? You've got to touch entitlements. And nobody wants to do that. Because the moment you start doing that, well, then that's going to start affecting you. And the world revolves around you. All around you. Doesn't matter the future of your grandchildren or your children. Doesn't matter the future of them. It's whatever you want. That's why nothing gets done. It's not just the politicians, it's those who put them into office and then reelect them. Those are the people who are stopping this country from being the best it could be. It is the people. But you're not going to hear that from most talking heads. They won't touch that because they love their ratings. I don't give a crap about ratings. I will tell you the truth. And that is the truth. Back in a minute. Welcome back, everyone, to the Blake Johnson program. Thanks for joining us this hour. Hope you've enjoyed the program today. Before we leave, let's go ahead and delve into our devotional segment, my favorite part of the show, and I would argue the most important part. This is from the book of Matthew, chapter 5. We'll start with verse 13 and read through verse 16. And this is about the salt and light of the earth and how we are the salt and light of the earth. It says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how then can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, so that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." I think this is a really important passage because it talks about how we've all got roles to play. No matter how, famous you are, or whoever you are called to be the salt and light of the earth. You are called to exhibit godliness to people around you, to bring people closer to Him, to make disciples of all nations. And you're also called to be the light. You are called to shine before men. It's not about good works. It's not about earning your way to heaven, but it is about pointing the way to Jesus, who is the way to heaven. So I found that really encouraging. And I mean, it's a simple couple of verses, but it's central to our faith. So as you go throughout the week, I hope that this message will ring true to you. Simple message, but very powerful truth. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me on this program. Coming up next, we have more great hosts, more great shows for you, so stick around. You won't want to miss everyone else here on the Lanterns Radio Network. Take care, have a great week, and God bless. See you next time.